Huge Khanun and tiny Dora continue in the Pacific on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for August 5th. So Little and Large Act continues in the Pacific, and the Atlantic remains quiet on this code orange day that we still have active right now because Khanun could re-strengthen back to typhoon status and affect the coast of Japan. Certainly going to be a big rainmaker. Now, I know we missed the bulletin yesterday, but not much has changed really in that time. Of course, Dora did reach that peak intensity of a Category 4, and we had that on our automated stream. 66 days of hurricane season we are into now. No areas of interest though, so things are looking nice and quiet. In the Eastern Pacific, Dora there, still a Category 2, although its eye is starting to possibly fall apart, and an 80% chance that we've marked off the coast of Mexico. I believe the National Hurricane Center have just gone to 90% on their update at the time of this broadcast. Looks like we'll get a new storm either way. And in the Western Pacific, of course, we've got Khanun, which is quite broad over the East China Sea and affecting the Japanese islands, and a 60% area of interest to its east for a new system that could develop as it moves off towards the north, out of Khanun's influence over there towards the Ogasawara Islands. North Indian Ocean, things are quiet there. We've long since seen the demise of that tropical storm that went unnamed that struck land over there a few days ago, and in general just a little bit of monsoonal activity over India. Satellite imagery in the last 24 hours, you can clearly see the unmistakable appearance of Khanun, even though imagery may have gone a little bit lower on that in terms of its strength. And Dora, you can see that on the left hand side as well, very difficult to spot for the untrained eye, but a very small system producing a lot of rainfall near its central core. A storm that's been small the whole time, and that will remain the case as it continues towards the west. It's staying at a low enough latitude that it will hold a lot of its intensity as it continues south of Hawaii eventually, which is what Calvin couldn't do. But this is Dora on satellite imagery right now. That eye is still somewhere around there. Whether it's collapsing or not, I'm not sure, but I think it is holding on, and that's why we've kept 110 miles per hour, which is what the NHC are going with as well, high-end Category 2. Now here is Khanun, an exposed but still formidable storm, and really easy on the eye as well, an enormous swirl that's going on there, of course, as you would expect, but the stronger convective tops are occurring on the eastern and southern sides, pretty much squarely over those the Ryukyu Islands, the main ones of Okinawa and the Amami Islands there, underneath some substantial convection, which is probably producing lots of rainfall. Now there's the mesoscale, which I think is slightly further up to date, and the general motion there is still quite uncertain, but we think eastwards now through the Amami Islands, and then cutting northwards towards Kyushu for a potential landfall there as we look at this radar. By the way, sort of associated with the storm, but lots of rainfall occurring over northern Taiwan there from a convective blob. Sea surface temperatures are looking good in the Eastern Pacific still, 30 degrees plus. We've still got that cool spot in the open ocean in the higher latitudes, but around 10 to 15 degrees north is the sweet spot for Dora. The Atlantic looks like this, very hot in the Gulf of Mexico, 30 degrees plus easily, also over the Bahamas, Western Caribbean, and into parts of the Sargasso Sea in the Western Atlantic and up the Gulf Stream. Very warm temperatures in a lot of places there, just waiting for that system to take advantage. Western Pacific, still a few hot spots, but a few cooler areas now developing, of course, in the shadow of those typhoons, particularly near Okinawa there, one or two little spots below 26 degrees thanks to Khanun, and that will, of course, make it a little bit more difficult for the storm to regenerate. Of course, if it moves further towards the northeast over those warmer waters again, it might have a better time. Bay of Bengal is generally warm there as well. There are one or two cool spots there too. The Arabian Sea is generally fairly cool, and the southwest Indian Ocean getting cooler there as well. Only a tiny slither now of 26 degrees Celsius near Madagascar. Around the Australian region, still cooling just a little bit further before we reach our minimum within the next month, and towards the South Pacific. Also, generally a similar appearance as to what we've been looking at over the last few weeks now over there. The anomalies then, a significant cool pool now in the Western Pacific, all thanks to those typhoons, mainly Khanun but Oksuri as well. That's still that cool spot in the Eastern Pacific, east of Hawaii, but very warm in the formation spots there off the Baja California Peninsula and in the eastern part of the East Pac. The Atlantic pretty much as a rule is above average, except maybe the central part where Don used to be a while back, which is around average. But in general, the Atlantic is 2 to 3 degrees above. And look at the oceanic heat content on the latest imagery. Enormous amounts now in the Western and Central Caribbean, extending into the Gulf of Mexico and around the Bahamas. It is rocket fuel over there if any storms find themselves in that area. Eastern Pacific off the coast of Mexico, still a few good spots there too. General Ocean not so much, and the Western Pacific still has some really energetic spots there near the Mariana Islands primarily, and has some work to do to get it back further west. So here is the GFS model, short range out to 5 days. You can see Dora there continuing on its way towards the west there, not moving particularly north, it's in anything slight southward component, and that second system there that forms pretty quickly on the GFS becomes a mid to maybe high range tropical storm as it passes southwest of the Baja California Peninsula and will remain at sea there, but it could get a little close to comfort for the Baja California Peninsula. Western Pacific, you can see Khanun there moving eastwards, almost due eastwards for a while, and then strengthening again as it moves northwards there, affecting the coast of Japan, striking land there in Kyushu, moving very slowly as it does so, maybe a secondary stalling motion going on there as the models have been evolving and have been calling for that actually, but the eastward trend a little bit more exaggerated now. A second system towards the east there that might form and become a significant storm, maybe a typhoon, and maybe a third one down towards the south there, not far from the Mariana Islands from Guam. But look at the rainfall from Khanun. This is the primary threat right now worldwide. We're looking at still extraordinary amounts of rainfall on top of what we've already received in these areas, particularly Okinawa, quite concerning. I don't know how much rain has fallen there, but projections a while back were calling for 40 inches. We're expecting another 13 inches from this point forth. That's nearly 350 millimeters. Over Kyushu, over 22 inches, getting up towards 600 millimeters, and more than that in some of the islands just south of Kyushu, over parts of Shikoku and over western and central Honshu, also getting up to 350 millimeters, and the east coast of South Korea as well could get up to 400 millimeters of rain there. And you saw earlier further north, even into Russia, where it could make its final landfall. Dare I say, it could still be tropical. It could still reach 10 inches up there, 250 millimeters. Okay, this is Dora, fast moving stream tonight. Update. It just about makes it to the international date line that I've marked there, and it swirls up towards the north and deteriorates very quickly just as it runs up against that international date line. It was almost like an invisible wall actually. It just completely kills off the storm. So it has a good run, but it will, by the looks of things, die off by the time we get to the 12th, 13th of August after it safely passes south of Hawaii. There's Khanun up the top there, making its landfall in Russia near the North Korean border. Really surprising to say that. That next typhoon there looks like it has a decent spell to the southeast of Tokyo, and that third system doesn't seem to last very long. Watch that again, that third system there not far from Guam, and then it gets swirled up towards the northeast. Dora might have a part to play in that as well, moving in from the east near the end of that loop. And then of course that second typhoon, the main feature, and it looks to continue after that. Well, that's all the serious stuff done with, and it was very interesting. Scan the barcode and that will take you to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all of our usual items. Maybe some new ones on the way, but for now we are still waiting for Hone, and Dora definitely doesn't count, even though it shares the second letter of its name. In the silly range then, we continue to look at the Western Pacific, and that means nothing in the Atlantic, by the way, at all. And that typhoon moves through northern Japan there and turns post-tropical not far from Hokkaido, and then eventually turns towards nowhere actually. It looks like it stalls there as an ex-tropical cyclone. Quite a few storms do that, but really a rip-roaring ride over the Western Pacific here over the next 2 weeks, where we could see several systems form, and Khanun in and of itself is enough to keep us talking, I think. You can talk about all of the developments in the tropics and elsewhere around the world on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13, for tropical weather and general chat with members from around the world. On this day, a completely different beast, and it really had that donut appearance. It was the peak of Hurricane Alex in 2004, which really set that season in motion. Yes, a late start to that season. We also had Tropical Depression 2L, which would later become Bonnie over there as it would enter the Gulf. We also had the remnants of Malu, which had made landfall in Japan as, I think, a strong tropical storm or Category 1 typhoon. And we had Typhoon Meranti, which was very far to the east, a Category 2, reaching its peak. I think it was a Category 2 or 3, moving generally northwards, not far from the international dateline. 19 years ago, wow. Back to today, the next name on the Atlantic naming list is Emily. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Eugene, and in the Central Pacific, our next name is Hone. 4 hurricanes in a row for the Eastern Pacific, 100% streak there so far. In the Westpac, the next name is Lam. Could it make 3 major typhoons in a row? Probably not. In the North Indian Ocean, of course, Tej is still the next name, despite that tropical storm last week, but didn't end up getting named earlier in the week. Australian region, the next name is Jasper. Southwest Indian Ocean will start with Alvaro, and the South Pacific will be Lola. 34 storms so far this year. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.